It should be recording now.
It's recording. Welcome to the latest game show. No, welcome to. Yeah, I can't do this. Welcome to youth group. Yeah, virtual youth group. Just what you've been waiting for, guys. And while we're waiting for you, we're gonna continue our top five, which my mom mentioned that we have such great chemistry about whatever when we the last Bible study we did together. So Brother Tim is going to be preaching to us tonight. But before we get to that, we are going to do a top five and another top five. Last time we did top five cereals, and I was shocked by the answers. I was grieved by the answers.
By the way,
how Corn Pops can be in the number one Corn Pops.
Brother Paul said he's going to revisit the cereal selection for camp.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. And hey, you know what? Well, and we also have Sister Maddie and Brother Ben here. Do you guys have any cereal that you would add to those numbers?
It was probably mentioned, but number one for me is Life.
Oh, Life. Yeah, Life is good.
Classic.
No.
What about you, Ben? What would you?
My number one?
Yeah. Or it doesn't have to be the number one. Like, what would be at least in your top three?
Probably definitely Fruity Pebbles.
Fruity Pebbles, yeah. See,
Yeah.
Those are both better answers than I was shocked. Wait, who said? Wait, Phil said Corn Pops is number one too, right?
I think I gave it number two.
I like Corn Pops a lot. I wouldn't put him in my top five probably.
I wouldn't put it in my top. I
had Pops last night.
Like
top 10.
I do like them.
But I like cereal. See, that's the tough thing. It's like it's sugary, chewy stuff, crunchy stuff with milk.
I just saw when I was at the store. It's like a new thing now. It's Sour Patch Kids cereal.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah.
I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, what?
That doesn't look good.
Like, how much more can you like kill your kids? Like,
Yeah.
like, what's the better?
Also, like,
it's the best way.
Idea of sour milk, like, it's just a terrible idea.
Yeah, that's a known bad thing.
All right. So anyway, we are going to do our top five characters that you would like to be quarantined with. So I'm not going first. That's all I'm saying. So this is actually partly stolen from another podcast, and I haven't listened to this part. So I'm really curious for some of the answers because I have some, but I'm just not going to go first. So whoever wants to. Brother Tim, why don't you?
Yeah, I went last week. I went last, so I'll go. I'm going to start at number five. So I have number five. I'll tell you who I crossed out too. I had LeBron James as my number five, and I crossed it out and I put Michael Jordan. That's Michael B. Jordan though.
Oh,
so
plot twist.
Yeah, Michael B. Jordan, the actor. I thought I don't know. He's got a lot of swag. So I thought like I could adopt some from being with him for a little bit.
Interesting.
I just watched Black
Panther.
Panther.
That in quarantine.
Well, I figure on the other side. Number four, I was going back and forth. I wanted a pastor with me. So I put, it's difficult deciding. I had, I'll cross one out. It's not my dad. I'm with him all the time, but I had Matt Chandler or Leonard Ravenhill. I think I'll go with Leonard Ravenhill.
Oh, that's good. That's spicy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and you know what? We should clarify in case I didn't mention this.
Yeah.
You're in your top five. You can't have family members. So
What
just
else?
because, like, we were just joking about, like, Liz and Isaac, for example, like if they had a top five, one of their family members has to go. So you got some problems there. So we're just avoiding family members.
Well, also no genie.
Oh, right. No extending wishes. Right.
I mean, most of the people, because I wasn't sure because I only heard characters, so I only picked mostly fictional people. So I wasn't thinking about anything else.
And as Madison told me before, I told her no Jesus, and she said he's always with us.
Yeah.
Touche.
All right. So my number three, my top three, I'm very confident in. I have Dwayne the Rock Johnson for my number three.
Hmm.
That would just be a great time. I think I really like him.
He's
Uh,
solid.
Number two, I have Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Mm,
Oh, wow.
I initially put Yoda, but I crossed that out. I think Obi-Wan would be better. As portrayed as Ewan McGregor, right? So that's the important part. And then number one, I wrote Tony Stark.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
You can figure
Very
out everything.
interesting. I'm going to see some parallels. Okay, with my top five. Okay.
Well, I didn't put mine in order. I just
Yeah, I had a tough time ranking mine too. Yeah. Yeah, just go.
all right. So I got Samwise Gamgee, Lord of the Rings.
Wow. Man, you guys are so thoughtful. This is bad. All right. That's great. All right, keep going.
Yeah, and he's really good at rationing elven loaves. So
Yeah.
perfect quarantine buddy. I got Tigger from Winnie the Pooh because you need some fun.
That's good.
He's gonna keep it real
interesting.
fun. Peter Pan, Sherlock
Okay.
Holmes, and Fred Rogers.
Wow, Mr. Rogers.
Oh, okay, Mr. Rogers. I didn't know his first name was
Wow.
Fred.
Okay, I might have to steal that one for different reasons. You'll see. Oh, that's good. Wait. Sherlock Holmes. Which Sherlock Holmes? Like which actor playing? Like, do you mean if Sherlock Holmes was a real person, or like who do you see play? Like Robert Downey Jr.
As Robert Downey Jr.
Okay.
Those are my five.
You want to go, Ben?
yeah. I think I don't know. I wouldn't have put it in order, but Dr. Emmett Brown from Back to the Future.
Whoa. Wait. You mean the
Yeah,
crazy white hair scientist guy?
Yeah, Doc, because he brings
Doc.
because he
Wow.
out of this.
Wow.
So you could go back and stop the coronavirus. That's good.
Oh wow.
Who else? Stark was another one that I thought of.
Okay.
Batman. Stark,
Two more.
Batman. And then the
Same question for Batman though. Which Batman portrayal?
oof.
I mean,
It's
Christian Bale, probably. More.
yeah, it's gotta be. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, yeah. And then what were my other two? Darn it.
You can chime back in because I may not have five, so maybe you'll give me a second.
I had more in mind, but I just can't.
Yeah. Well, if you remember them, chime back in because I think I only have 3 or 4, but I'm not sure.
I wrote mine
So-
down.
In my top 5, again, these are kind of, I guess, not ranked, was one of the first ones was, and this is kind of weird, it's controversial, but I'm gonna put it out there, Gordon Ramsay. Just because I figure, like, I don't know, like Christy and I don't really watch that much of him, but like I figured like we could learn some cooking while you're in quarantine. Like that's a useful skill. Like
Yeah.
We'd have to watch his language around the kids, but that so yeah, Gordon.
What are you doing, Cole?
So Gordon Ramsay are completely different. Superman, mainly because like I figure like he can go on errands and like it's not you don't have to worry about him catching the virus because like he's an alien. I don't
very
think
belittling for him.
Right? Oh, and it's funny. You both, Ben and Tim, you guys both said
Tony Stark.
Tony Stark, but I said Elon Musk. So I was thinking the same thing.
Oh, so the real life Tony Stark.
The real life Tony Stark, basically. Yeah. Just because I thought it like I don't know, that would be interesting to have conversations. So that was 3, and then also I had some pastors. I was. Man, I see. I'm forgetting one, but I was caught between Matt Chandler and Tim Keller. That's what it would be for me. But I guess you could take them both, and I would have 5 there. But I think those were the ones that I thought of. And then I think the Flash crossed my mind. But then I was like, if you have Superman, it's not like you need the Flash too. It's like,
Yeah. Didn't
come on.
Superman win in a race anyway?
Really?
I think he was
That's why-
flying, but still.
Yeah, whatever. But yeah, so that would be, I think that's my top 5. Yeah.
Those are really well thought out.
That you know what? Hey,
You
That's
gotta
right.
think though. I mean, you're gonna be stuck with these people.
The other two that I just remembered now that I chosen, I thought because I just wanted something more comical, was Jack Sparrow
oh, that would be.
and Wallace and Gromit.
And who?
Oh,
Wallace and Gromit.
well, which one though?
It's hard to have them not together, but I guess I would probably choose Wallace.
That's the.
From
that's,
Wallace and Gromit.
is that the
Oh.
dog or the man?
I think that's the man.
Okay, you want the man. Okay. Well,
That's
this-
good.
Yeah.
See, the other elements of this conversation which we didn't bring up, and I started thinking about, is like, are we just like randomly naming our top 5 people, or like, do you have to like start thinking about how they would coexist together? Because I don't, because you know what, even more so, like if I had Elon Musk and like Tim Keller and Matt Chandler in a room, like that would be so cool. Like I want to see that podcast, you know?
Yeah, but by the end, I think all of the people on my list would be Christians because of Leonard Ravenhill.
Boom.
Although I suspect Obi-Wan is already a Christian.
Yeah.
He exemplifies faith.
Oh man. All right. So wait, is that it? Is that our top 5? And now we're diving in, or is there anything else we need to talk about?
Sounds good.
I don't have
So,
anything.
wait,
to
how
say.
about this? Let's talk about for next time. What should be another top 5? Like, what would be another good top 5? The quarantine one is working. That's good. I was thinking. I think we talked about this like when we first talked about like the top 5 idea. It would be cool if we had a like top 5 survival, like top 5 things that you would need in quarantine. So like that could be quarantine now where you are, or like maybe like top 5 things if you're stranded on an island, that type of.
I
thought.
love that one. That was good.
Yeah.
And again, we have to leave off family members. We might have to even like exclude like a Bible too, just because, like.
I have it in here.
But having it in my heart.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if I think of anything, I'll just let you guys know. But yeah, you can keep it going for another week. See.
Yeah. Pretty soon the top 5 is just going to be part of our church institution. Like
Oh,
that's how all services are going to start.
Morning announcements.
And today we have
Top
special
5
guest.
Morning announcements.
Oh man, that's good.
But yeah, I got nothing.
All right, cool. So then we're signing off and wrapping up. Make sure you have your Bible in hand. You have like a couple seconds. Open up the Bible app or your physical Bible. Get ready. We're going to continue. Brother Tim's going to be speaking to us on Hebrews 11. So stay tuned.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to our weekly study through the book of Hebrews. This is something we've been going through in our youth group for the past 7 months now, and so we've been plugging our way along. Just before I go any further, I just want you to understand, you're probably thinking, well, why is Tim wearing a hat right now? He's preaching, he shouldn't be wearing a hat. Is this what they do in youth group? They don't have any standards, they just wear hats all the time. Well, okay, so I'm wearing a hat because I think it would be more offensive if I wasn't wearing a hat. Okay, so I've been in quarantine for just as long as you. My hair looks just as bad as yours. We're having a little competition in youth group, at least among the guys. This is what we do in our video chat after, at least for a little bit of the time. But we like to see whose hair looks worse or more crazy. I won't say worse, but right now I would say I'm not in the lead. I would say that token probably, you know who you are. It's either, sorry, Josh or Gilmar. You're winning this one so far. But I would say that I'm coming right behind you guys. So that's why I'm wearing a hat. So before I go any further, just understand, I think it's more offensive if I take the hat off. I promise. But anyway, last week we got to one of the most famous chapters in the Bible. Matt and I discussed through the chapter 11 of Hebrews. It's known as the faith chapter, the hall of faith, call it what you will. And at the very beginning of Hebrews, Hebrews 11, we get a definition of faith. It says faith is the assurance, that word is important, assurance of things hoped for, and the conviction of things not seen. Assurance and conviction. And we came to the place where we understood that everybody in this world has assurance and conviction, aka faith, in something. It just depends what that faith is in. And the world has faith and tells us to have faith in ourselves. Believe in yourself and anything is possible. And that's a great mantra. It sounds so good, but unfortunately it's so wrong. And maybe you found that to be true. It honestly misplaced faith. But I could believe in myself all I want. I'm not going to succeed everything that I put my mind to. I want to be 7 feet some days. I'm not going to be. I can't have faith that I can do anything that I want to do. And so the world's perspective of faith is very introspective. Have faith in yourself. The Christian's faith is the exact opposite and says faith should be outside of yourself in something different. And ultimately, your faith should be in Jesus. Oh, why should it be in Jesus? Well, because if I have faith in myself, well, listen, if I know anything about me and I know anything about you, you're pretty messed up. Sorry that I said it. Someone had to say it. It just had to be me, unfortunately. But you're pretty messed up. I'm pretty messed up. Bible says that we're messed up. We're deceitfully wicked. The heart is deceitful. Bible also talks about how terrible we are all the time. People are always messing up. We're always shaking. We never have a firm grasp on anything. But on the flip side, Jesus the book of Hebrews will tell us in a little bit that he is one who cannot and will not be shaken. And he's greater than anything else that we can put our faith in. That's all Hebrews is talking about. And so the Christian has the opportunity to say, I'm putting my faith in Jesus, one who is not shaken. And that is so beautiful because though our faith is small, we learned this last week, our faith doesn't depend on the quantity or the quality, but the substance. I could have a lot of faith, great faith, and great quality of faith that I am going to be 7 feet tomorrow. But you know what? It doesn't matter because the substance of that faith is terrible. But Jesus says, have faith of a mustard seed, and you can move a mountain. But where do I put that faith in myself? No, put that faith in Jesus. And then last week we saw this is actually 2 weeks ago, we saw 3 different traits that are lived out in 3 different characters. The first is that faith is Christ-centered. Faith is not looking to me, but looks to Christ and his standards and his ways. Faith is relational. We're not meant to not know the one whom we're putting our faith in, but we're meant to have an intimate relationship with him. Jesus is not just an idea. He's a person that we can get to know, and we're meant to get to know him. And third, and this is the one we're going to talk a little bit more about today, faith leads to obedience. And we saw that in Noah, and again, we're going to be discussing that in a little more depth today. But before I do, I just want to share with you a quote that I saw, and it speaks to faith. It's by a Danish philosopher. I'm not going to try to say his name. His last name is Kierkegaard. I tried to say that with a German accent. I don't know if you noticed that, but it says this: life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward. In other words, you must live your life with faith. Now, the character we're going to discuss today in the book of Hebrews is the character of Abraham. And Abraham apparently had a really special faith because we're talking about it here in Hebrews. It's mentioned all up in a whole other bunch of places in the Bible. I'm just going to read a few of them to you. Nehemiah chapter 9 and verses 7 through 9 says this. Really just verse 7. You are the Lord, the God who chose Abram and brought him out of Ur of the Chaldeans and gave him the name Abraham. You found his heart faithful before you. You can skip now. We're going to look at another famous passage about Abraham, book of Romans. Romans chapter 4 and verses 1 through 3 say this. What then shall we say was gained by Abraham, our forefather, according to the flesh? For if Abraham was justified by works, he has something to boast about, but not before God. For what does Scripture say? Abraham believed God, aka Abraham had faith in God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. The last one that I want to share with you again quickly is found in the book of James, chapter 2 and verse 23. And Scripture was fulfilled that says Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. And he was called a friend of God. We read all these different things about Abraham and Abraham believing in God and Abraham having faith. What made his faith so special? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about here. What makes Abraham's faith so special? But before we do that, I asked Bethany actually if she would read the text for us this evening. She's not here. I had her read it at her home. And so Bethany's going to read to us Hebrews chapter 11, starting in verse 8 and going all the way through verse 22.
Hebrews 11, 8 through 22. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By faith he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. By faith Sarah herself received power to conceive, even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore from one man, and him as good as dead, were born descendants, as many as the stars of heaven, and as many as the innumerable grains of sand by the seashore. These all died in faith, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. For people who speak thus make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. By faith Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. By faith Isaac invoked future blessings on Jacob and Esau. By faith Jacob, when dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph, bowing in worship over the head of his staff. By faith Joseph, at the end of his life, made mention of the exodus of the Israelites and gave directions concerning his bones.
Thank you, Bethany. Before we dive in a little bit more, I want to ask you the question, and this is going to be relevant. What makes home home? Do you understand the way I asked that? What makes home home? Because no matter who you are, home represents something special to you. I'll explain what I mean by that. While you're thinking about that, you can comment what makes home home to you if you want in the comment section. But last summer, I'm not complaining about this. I'm just trying to make a point come across. But last summer, from the second week in June all the way to the second week in August, I was not at my home for more than 2 days at a time. Now again, I'm not complaining about that. I was in good places. The second week in June was a minister's retreat at camp. And so I was there, and then I was on vacation, and I was at a conference in Canada, and I was at camp for a whole bunch of weeks. And so I was here, there, and everywhere. But all throughout this time that I was away, I just felt exhausted. And it wasn't because I wasn't sleeping. Like, I went on vacation. I would sleep on vacation. I went on a conference in Canada. The only thing I had to do was go to church and go to sleep. That's it. Those were the only things to do. And so I slept a lot while I was there. But still, I was tired. Because undoubtedly, home represents a special place to you. I don't know if it's the things that you have in home. Maybe it's the people that you have at home. You're probably actually discovering right now what makes home home to you, because home is the only place that you can go right now or stay. But home represents a special place. Now, how would you react if God told you to leave home and he didn't tell you where you were going? Because that's exactly what happened to Abraham. Abraham was told, hey, I want you to get up, go from the place you're living, and go to a place that I'm not telling you about yet. Okay. No, that's not the reaction we'd have. You'd be like, no, this is my home. When I moved out of my parents' home into my own home, that was like a monumental thing for me, because that's been my home. And I only felt comfortable because I knew where I was going, and I had to go there for work. But I knew where I was going. If I had no idea where I was going to end up, I don't think that I'd go there. But God tells Abraham, look, I want you to get up and leave and go to a place I'm not telling you about. Abraham says, okay, I'll go. That, brothers and sisters, is faith. There's 3 points that I'd like to make about Abraham's faith tonight with you. They're going to happen pretty quickly. This is not going to be particularly long. But the first one is that I'll tell you all three actually. There must be an inner response to faith. There must be an external response to faith. And faith looks to promise and has hope. So again, the first is that there must be an inner response to faith. Abraham trusted God immediately and in his heart. That's the internal response. See, faith is not fundamentally about changing outward behavior. Did you get that? Because that's important. Faith is not fundamentally about changing outward behavior. See, so many people are fighting faith on the wrong level. They think it's all about external behavior, and they don't worry about what's going on the inside. It's fundamentally about internal behavior. Let me try to describe what I mean. You can buy workout clothes. You can get a whole bunch of Nike gear. Look, you can get fancy. You can get Lululemon. I think that's the name brand. That's super expensive these days. You can get whatever you want. You can get an oxygen mask. You can get the best golf driver that there possibly is. You can get one of those things where you tie something around your waist and there's a parachute that creates drag, so it's harder to run. You can buy all of the right stuff, but if there's not something changing on the inside, you're still going to be the same out of shape blob that you were before you got all the workout clothes. See, if your metabolism isn't changing, if your cholesterol's not going down, if your overall weight's not decreasing or increasing, depending on what you're working for, then it doesn't matter what the outside is like. The fight of faith is the fight for desire for God. That's what faith is. Faith is a greater desire for God. Abraham, when he was called to go away from home, he desired God so much that he went. He didn't care where he was called to go. So let me ask you the question. Is God calling you to do something that you are actively or passively ignoring? Do you trust God's plan more than your own plan? Are we afraid, or what are we afraid to give up that God might call away from us? Depending on how you answer those questions, I think you ought to do some investigations into your own life and say, is my faith only external or is it also internal? I think oftentimes we're like a little child. A few years ago, I was at camp and Pastor Gary was there with his youngest son, and his youngest son was around 1 or 2 at the time, and I remember seeing Gary running down the dock. Now that's not allowed, I'm a lifeguard. I didn't say anything though, but Gary was holding his youngest son's hand and he was running. His son wasn't really running. Gary was kind of just dragging him or lifting him up, and he jumped into the deep end of the water and his son completely submerged, and then his son came out laughing and he was happy, and all the while Gary's wife was on the beach watching in absolute horror. I remember looking back and her hand was over her mouth and her eyes were really big and she was just terrified over what was going to happen to her son, but her son was delighted. Now rewind a few days ago, and you've got Gary standing in the shallow end of the water with his arms extended, his son standing on the dock. Gary's pleading with his son to jump in the water. His son's shaking his head no, crying and saying, there's no way I'm getting in there. Now, does his son doubt the presence of his father? No, he doesn't doubt the presence of his father because he knows his father's there. He doubts the ability or the willingness of his father to catch him when he jumps. See, we like to say that we trust God, but we always have a backup plan, don't we? I'll jump in, God, but as long as I have my floaties with me, I'll go in. There's a quote by Charles Spurgeon. By the way, Charles Spurgeon, his wife was 22 years older than him. I just found that a little interesting. So his wife did quite well for herself. But Spurgeon says this, the worldling blesses God while he gives him plenty. But the Christian blesses God when he smites him. He believes him to be too wise to err and too good to be unkind. He trusts him where he cannot trace him, looks up to him in the darkest hour, and believes that all is well. To be that Christian, that requires an inner response of faith. That requires a greater desire for God than anything else in this world. There must be an inner response of faith that makes you have no reservations about jumping in the water wherever God calls, whether it's in the shallow section or whether it's in the deep section. The inner response to faith doesn't look at the present circumstances surrounding you, but it looks to the promise of the Father. There must be an internal response to faith. 2, there must be an external response to faith. Abraham trusted God completely and obeyed immediately. There must be an external response to faith. If you would, I'm not going to read these verses now just for time, but if you look at verses 17 through 22, that gives the account in Hebrews 11, that gives you the account of Abraham bringing his son up a mountain, all at God's bidding, to go and sacrifice his son. Now, this is the son that God promised to Abraham. He promised Abraham and Sarah, when Sarah was past the age of childbearing, I'm going to give you a son and you're going to have many descendants. And then God, a few years later, is saying, hey, I want you to kill that son. Now, I hope that my father, I don't know what I hope, maybe. But in my mind, I think it'd be nice if my dad had some reservations when God told him that. But the appropriate response is that you have no reservations. And the Bible actually says that Abraham went the next morning after God told him. Didn't sleep on it for a few nights. God told him, and then there was an external response. Back to the workout thing, you could tell me you're working out all you want. You could tell me your cholesterol is going down. You could tell me your weight's going down. You could tell me that your metabolism's getting faster, that you feel better. But if you still look the same, I'm not going to believe it. If we meet and you can only bench press 100 pounds and then 10 months later you say you're benching 300 pounds, I'm not going to believe it if you look the same. There has to be external change. I spoke about this a long time ago in the book of Hebrews, but if I want to prove to you that I'm not scared of the dark, because I am, And I told you, whenever I go to the bathroom at night, I look both ways because I think there's a man there ready to kill me. I look both ways like I'm going to cross the street or something because I think something's going to jump out of the dark. But if I want to prove to you I'm not scared of the dark, you know what I'll do? I'll walk in it. There will be external proof that I am walking in faith. Book of James says that faith without works is what? Dead. Faith without works is dead. Abraham went from where he was to a place he didn't know where he was going. Abraham getting a promise from God. Then God tells him, I want you to go and kill that promise. Goes the next morning. Now thank God that God stayed Abraham's hand before he sacrificed Isaac. But faith requires external response. And if I could just preface this by saying, sometimes the external response does not make sense. It didn't make sense probably to Abraham that he was going up a mountain to kill his son. Probably didn't make sense. But he did it anyway. See, Christians, I think we spend too much time bending over backwards trying to make sense of God's ways. And sometimes we are able to make sense, but you know what? Oftentimes you can't make sense of it. You can only cling to the promise that you have in the Bible. You can only cling to the assurance that God's way is best. Now, how have you been responding externally in your faith? Yeah, I have faith in God. I have faith in Him. Well, what happens when God tells you to go witness to that person over there? Oh, no way, God, I believe in you, but not enough to talk to somebody else about it. Well, what happens when God's calling you to wake up and go to church when you're supposed to be going to church? Because you ought to be part of a family of God, contributing as a member of the body. Well, God, I have faith, but not faith enough to believe Romans chapter 12. Believe that I need to be a member of the body. No way, God. How have you been responding to faith externally? 1, faith requires an internal response. 2, faith requires an external response. And lastly, and I'm going to sum this up as quickly as possible, faith looks to the promise and has hope. Looks to the promise and has hope. If you remember from last week, I told you that faith without reason is not faith at all. Faith without reason is stupidity. I could, if I have a fever, a dry cough, and all the other symptoms that accompany the coronavirus, but I say, I have faith that I don't have the coronavirus. I don't know, is it bold to say that's just stupidity? But we can believe God for His promises, that we can believe that God's way is better even when they don't make sense, because He promises that to us in His Word. He says that His ways are better. His ways are beyond us. And He assures us that His way is best. Look to the promise of God. Look to the eternal inheritance that you're going to get one day. Look to being a co-heir of Christ. Look to the joy that He provides for us. Look to the word that does not fade. Though the flower fades and the grass withers, the word of the Lord remains the same. Yesterday, today, forever, Jesus is the same. Though the whole world be shaken, we follow a God who is unshaken. Cling, Christian, to those promises. John Piper says in a quote, I just want to share with you, what is faith? It is seeing the promises of God from afar and experiencing a change of values so that you desire the promises above what the world has to offer. It is a glad greeting of those promises from a distance and a heart seeking to know them and cherish them and be satisfied by them so that a new kind of life emerges that is out of sync with this world. A change in values so that you desire the promises above, greater than the promises of this world. Why have faith in Jesus? Read Hebrews 1 through 10, because He's better. We put our faith in one who infinitely loves us infinitely more than anybody else, anything could ever love us, gives us infinitely more joy than anything or anyone could ever give us. I just want to read you a song. I've shared it before, but I don't like the melody that much, but I do like the words a whole lot. It says this: He does not lead me year by year or even day by day, but step by step my path unfolds. The Lord directs my way. Why should I worry then or fret? For the God who gave his only Son holds all my moments in his hand and gives them one by one. If I could give you an encouragement this evening or exhortation, no one in this book who put their faith in Jesus ever regretted it. When they got to the end of the road, I don't think they said, man, I wish I didn't put my faith in Jesus for that. No, they never regretted it because they found Jesus to be better. They found him to be greater. Let's pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, we do thank you for your word, Lord. I pray that the things that we've heard tonight, God, would become real in our own hearts, Lord. I pray that there would be an internal response to faith, Lord, that it would start there. It would start in our hearts, God. And I pray that as we fill up in our hearts with faith towards you, there would be an external display, God, bursting through us, Lord. And I pray ultimately that our faith would look towards your promises, look towards the hope that you give us, God. I thank you that we have the assurance that we could put our faith in you, Lord, and that you love us more passionately and more fervently than anyone or anything could ever love us, Lord Jesus. Give us faith in these days. In your name I pray, amen. As always, there's going to be a video chat after for the youth group. We're going to have another Kahoot today. If you really want to join in and you're not in youth group, you can feel free to text me. This is not going to be a Hebrews Kahoot, but it's going to be a whole Bible Kahoot. And so feel free to join in youth group. You'll be getting a text from myself or Chisella with a link to join in. And so I hope to see you there.